Good evening, everyone. Today, Monday, May 12th, 2025. I've got 7 o'clock, so we will call to order this meeting of the Committee of the Whole. We will get started first with items from the Department of Engineering. Good evening, Director.
Good evening, Chair Weaver, members of council. The mic's on. Good start. I have 3 items before you this evening. The first item is a request authorizing the mayor to enter into contract with AECOM for can't make it up to the time. All right. So, the first item on the first request on the agenda this evening is a request to have the mayor enter into contract for the West Gahanna Relief Sewer Project. This is much more extensive than a relief sewer. It also includes stormwater drainage evaluation of the tributary area for the entire west side, explores green infrastructure along the proposed route of the relief sewer, as well as transportation and mobility improvements, predominantly along West Johnstown Road as it goes through that segment, that phase of construction, and then into the residential areas. AECOM was selected through the RFQ process pursuant to the Ohio Revised Code. We had 4 submittals, statements of qualifications that were submitted. We down selected to 2 firms, interviewed those 2 firms. The selection committee got that down to AECOM, and then we've been in fee negotiation here with AECOM. Stepping back as it relates to this overall project, the impetus was the March and May of 2020 storm events that caused issues in the sanitary sewer system, where we had water and basement issues. And as a result of that, we had community surveys, smoke and dye testing, then flow monitoring, metering, and hydraulic modeling to come up with recommendations. It was last fall, I believe in September, that was before you with the overall recommendations, and then proceeding into to this design-related effort. So, open any questions as it relates to the proposal.
All right, thank you, Director. I see Mr. Schnetzer, and then Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director. Very minor question, Director. When you say the scope of work is to evaluate or to look at stormwater runoff for the, I believe, quote, entire west side, end quote, what is that?
So it'll be from basically
creek?
270 east to the Big Walnut.
Okay.
So all of Gahanna proper within the bounds of 270, because 270 loops around the south end. So it will look at the tributary areas associated with that, the storm system, and look for deficiencies within the overall system, and then along the path and alignment associated with these improvements, if there are opportunities to otherwise address the stormwater drainage issues in that area, that we can accomplish those through the improvements. Also, it'll help inform future rebuilds, street rebuilds, and future improvements within the neighborhood in regards to where those deficiencies are, so that we can take corrective action at a future date.
Thank you so much, sir. That's it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Schnetzer. Mr. Renner?
Yes, Director, thank you so much for this, and including the green infrastructure with the hydraulic study. So to dovetail with Mr. Schnetzer, can you give us an idea or ballpark about what the timing of the study and when we can actually expect, some results of that?
So we enter into contract, issue notice to proceed, and I'm hoping that later this fall or by the first quarter of next year, we'd be in a position to be able to provide some information back. One of the things that was a differentiator in selecting AECOM is they did their due diligence leading up to the presentation for the overall selection, they looked at an alternative path along Coronation as opposed to coming down Coronation to Regents to Imperial, then down to Agler. They explored a route that went down Coronation, up Stigler, and down McCutcheon to tie into the Columbus 84. So as a part of their due diligence leading into that, that was one of the differentiators in selecting them over the second firm.
I'm aware of AECom, and so you did well, and that they're a reputable firm. On the green infrastructure side, can you give us a taste or flavor for the types of projects that we might see?
So I would say that generally speaking, stormwater related, so you would see kind of the green infrastructure, Columbus Blueprint, Portland, Oregon has a Green Streets initiative that is a model for communities. We'll also be looking at recycled content, so recycled asphalt, carbon associated with concrete and so forth. So we'll be looking at those, as well as if there's any initiatives within the sanitary and/or water side as we're embarking on the improvements.
Okay. I really deeply thank you for your leadership on this. So I'll be waiting with bated breath, for the results. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renner. I saw Mrs. McGregor.
Will this include sidewalks on West Johnstown Road?
Multi-use trail and sidewalk.
Okay. And then will it look at like storm drops in backyards, like that maybe have that have like sunk below the grade, or?
So within the overall storm modeling, they'll capture the entire drainage area and structures that may be in rear yard easements to evaluate that as well within the area.
Thank you.
The only question I had, Director, could you please explain the request for emergency on this one?
So this goes to the next item. Columbia Gas has a major project going through town, and the overall coordination efforts associated with that, getting this project advanced on the design stage, because Columbia Gas is a bit further in their planning and design activities. We need to get caught up so that we can inform the permitting side of things. The sewer is going to be deeper than their line, so making sure in areas where we're overlapping in the corridors, we want to make sure that we're dictating which side of the street that they're on.
Thank you, Director. Yeah, and I know you had included that in the report. I just think it's beneficial to have it here as well, so appreciate it. Any other questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, emergency is requested, so on for first on the 19th and then consent on June 2nd?
Sounds good.
All right, thank you. Next item, please, Director.
The next item is a request to have the mayor enter into contract with TNM for the construction permitting for the Columbia Gas high-pressure line. This is basically staff augmentation with a project of this nature, scope, and scale. I have one right-of-way administrator to cover all the logistics of coordinating utility relocations and amongst various projects, bringing in outside help to assist on the overall project and permitting so that we can care for the other permits that are otherwise coming through, the more routine permits that come through our office. So we went through a similar process through the RFQ and selection process. TNM was ultimately selected. We are working on, and I guess Senior Director Schultz here could otherwise speak to, we're collaboratively working on a participation agreement where we'd be seeking reimbursement from Columbia Gas for approximately 65% of the overall efforts. So that is in the works, and hopefully we'll have a participation agreement coming forward at a future date.
Thank you, Director. Any discussion from my colleagues? All right, seeing none, on for first next week and then consent on the 2nd?
Sounds great.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Next item, please, Director.
Okay, and the last item is we recently bid the 2025 Sidewalk Look Back Program. And this is to further our efforts associated with the ADA transition plan. Professional pavements was the apparent low and best responsive bidder, and we're recommending award of contract to Professional Pavements.
All right, thank you, Director. Any questions or discussion? I see Ms. Padova.
Good evening, thank you. Quick question for you. I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but just want to confirm that on the Look Back program, it is the same procedure as the regular sidewalk program where people can opt in and out?
Correct.
Okay. And then the city will be covering half the cost of those?
That is correct.
Okay, awesome. And then I was also wondering, which I probably should have asked this whenever we approved the area, but I was just curious, what is the reason that these are all in kind of the same area? Are you doing it by area, or is that just how
We're trying to set it up in particular areas so that the contractor is not jumping around
Okay,
throughout the community. So
Okay.
we've taken, I believe it's the 2021, 22, and 23 street rebuild and street maintenance related projects that occurred in those previous years, and going through the look back and trying to target areas to cover the maintenance on the look back side.
Okay, perfect. That's what I assumed. I just wanted to make sure that was correct. And that makes sense, so that then they're not jumping all over Gahanna to get some of these little spots. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Ms. Jones.
Is this the same vendor that we will be using for, I guess, the non-look back, the core sidewalk program?
So the sidewalk program for the 2025 initiative was awarded to Decker Construction, and that
Okay.
follows our street maintenance program. We will be bidding our street rebuild and water line related work on Laura, Heil, and Rocky Fork Drive North coming up later this year. So as a part of that, there will be sidewalk as a part of those rebuilds in consistency with the overall outlay. The city covers the cost to get those sidewalks ADA compliant in those corridors. And then at the time thereafter, it's the resident responsibility to maintain them in good shape.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, on for first next week, and then consent on the second? All right. Thank you very much, Director. Appreciate it. Next up, we have items from the Senior Director of Operations. Good evening, sir. Good evening, gentlemen.
Corey and I are just going to settle in while we hit the next few, so we can just keep moving here. Give me a second to pull up my presentation. First item here is our regular monthly construction update for 825 Tech Center Drive. A little bit briefer than it was last month. So as you guys know, I hope folks have had the opportunity to drive past the site most recently. Again, I know I say it every month, but I'll reiterate it, that a tremendous amount of work is going on in that particular area, and the building really is, well, I mean, as we'll see here in a couple minutes, but the building is, 100% dried in at this particular point in time, and progress is happening fast. So I would say that if anybody does want to come over and tour again, just reach out and let me know, because like, as for example, the whole entire first floor is now poured and available to walk through and really understand how the public is going to ultimately interact with the building. Council chambers is, while not drywalled in, you can experience council chambers very well, and the whole entire lobby area and those public corridors. And the first slide did pass through pretty quickly here. But just you have a really good understanding of just how warm and inviting the space is going to be, and how ultimately the public will come in and get service, whether it's for a meeting like today, or to come to Mayor's Court or to pay a utility bill. or quite frankly, just to come work for the day. So by way of our April updates, like I've already said, the entire building is dried in at this particular point in time. The exterior metal framing, so basically where the roof meets the new portion of the building, that exterior metal framing is complete. Site work and underground utilities are complete on the site itself. We're actually going to start seeing concrete curbs and those types of things go into the parking lot here by the end of May, right? So that gives us a good barometer on seeing exactly what the site will look like and feel like. We have a real good idea internal to the building, as I've already described, but it really gives us a good understanding of how the site itself will end up operating and where those lanes will be in the parking lot, shapes up to, so on and so forth. And all that's happening pretty quickly. We would think by early September, actually, there'll be first course of pavement down on that parking lot, and you'll really be able to experience the whole entire site at that particular point in time. From an interior standpoint, I know I've said this last time, and these could potentially get a little bit redundant, but when you're standing up on the third floor, and you're in a whole different world than when you're standing down on the first floor, just from the overall sequencing and scheduling of construction in the building. There's almost the entire third floor is primer and first coat painted as an example. Ceiling grid is going in, lighting is going in. It's my understanding that they will actually be able to light the entire third floor in the next 2 weeks. So there's a great example of some of the things that are going on the third floor. Obviously, as you move down in the building, things get less finished, if you would, or less further along. And by the time you reach the lobby area, the lobby was just recently poured at the end of April. Same thing with the sally ports and those types of areas, the final areas, if you would, internal to the building. There's still some first floor rough-in going on, and that includes not just framing, but it also includes the HVAC and other utilities on the first floor itself. By time, we're 68% complete. I will remind everybody that on May 1st of last year, technically April 30th of last year, was the 1-year anniversary of construction beginning on the site itself. I forget exactly when we stood out there in the spring and had our groundbreaking ceremony, but that was in the month of May. We're still tracking rather well on our weather days. We've only experienced one additional weather day, I should say, in the month of April. Yep, in the month of April. And obviously, as the site gets formed up and a little bit further along, those weather days should actually be reduced to 0. So just some pictures that are emblematic of what the work is that's going on. They really don't show that well, but you can see the ceiling grid. This is all on the third floor of the facility itself. You can see the painted enclaves. I know I pointed those out in my what would have been my March update. But you can see the lights going in and the different HVAC things going in, the room controls, so on and so forth, up in that ceiling. And that'll actually give this guy next to me the ability to close out one of his grants, the EECBG grant, which was for lighting upgrades inside of the facility. Only $78,000. We're not going to sneeze at $78,000, but you're probably looking at $78,000 worth of lights as opposed to the whole entire electrical package. Some exterior pictures. That's actually a picture that was taken just today on the upper left of the exterior of the site. One of the things in this lower picture that you'll notice is all this ribbing that's going in. What the next thing we'll start to see is the stonework get placed on both the PD side of the building and then also on the senior center side of the building as well. And then just another picture here, overview of the site and the roof as it faces off the front of the building. From a budget standpoint, again, this slide just the top box is this summary of the GMP1, GMP2 construction contract 1 and 2, and then the total for the $59 million. That's on the construction side. To date, we've invoiced 52% of the project, so just over or just under $31 million. Excuse me. And then the bottom box there is the budget and the budgeted allowances and contingencies on the project itself. And we've set bent, that 4.9 number does not make sense. That is a typo. I'll get that corrected. I think that's 41.9% of the allowances on the project itself, and then 37% of the overall owner and construction contingencies. The approved total for all three of technically three of those numbers, allowances, owner contingency, construction contingency is just under $1.8 million or 38%, almost 39% of the $4.7 million there that's been allocated. So with that, I could take any updates or questions rather on the construction side before I move on.
Thank you, Director. Any questions?
Maybe just one.
Ms. Bowers?
Yeah, just to clarify, I think, and to make it abundantly, I guess, as clear and transparent as possible. So you've identified completion by time and completion by dollars. Based on your understanding of the project, are we on track? Are we on progress with this project?
Yeah, so we've had there's these magic contractual words of substantial completion. Substantial completion date was originally November 4th. I believe that's going to shift a little bit, but our overall move-in schedule for the building will likely stay very similar to what it was, which will be January, February of 26. And that's the way in which we'll end up receiving the building. We'll end up receiving the building from third floor to first floor so that things like furniture installation and those types of activities can take place while the rest of the building is being finished. That's not that we would move the third floor to the first floor, but other work can take place. Elford would as an example, Elford would turn the building over, and then we'd have 60 days worth of furniture installation. So Elford will continue to work, and furniture installation will be going on in areas that are already complete and turned over to us. So we believe that the schedule is still early 26 for move-in.
So we had talked about Christmas Day as kind of the,
I'm sorry?
we had talked about Christmas Day as the turnkey date. Is that just as simple as possible? Is that still what we're looking at?
Early January or February for move-in. Yeah, so that substantial completion and keys turnover, I'd have to look at the schedule more specifically. But yeah, we're tracking within a few weeks of that Christmas date
Okay,
at
thank
this
you.
particular time.
Thank you, Director.
Any other questions? All right, please continue, Director.
So my next item I have is one of the last large piece of procurement for the facility itself. If you guys remember the famous term FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, it caused a little bit of confusion as we were doing overall budgets and stuff. But just by way of review, the first box here is the overall budget. If you remember, I had to look the number up also, so I don't expect you guys to remember. We had basically a $1.6 million FF&E budget on the original contract. We have added $500,000 in EQ 25, so capital project EQ 2504, and that was the health and wellness equipment and furnishings allocation. That was a dividend that we had received from our insurance folks. And this money was specifically to be used towards more ergonomic standing desks, those types of furnishings. And then we also had a EQ 2502, which was for 911 dispatcher workstations for about $160,000, bringing our total FF&E budget to $2.3 million. On the office furniture side, we recently, similar to what Tom was describing on his contracts, we went out to RFP, request for proposals for the furniture, the office furniture side. It largely included office workstations, so that would be things like cubicles and desks, furniture inside the individual departments itself, conference room and meeting spaces, so furniture for those areas, furniture for rooms like city council chambers like this, the senior center. Obviously, this is a much larger facility, purpose-built facility, and honestly, a facility that has a number of meeting spaces in it that we, obviously don't have today. And then the last component there would be break room and soft seating areas to furnish those areas for staff and for the public, for that matter, right? So areas in that main lobby for folks to come and sit while they're either pre-meeting. You guys can have constituent hours out in that particular area. A member of the public can come and work for the day in that particular space, or furniture for court, so on and so forth. So we have a rather large profile. So the results of the RFP process, we did receive 3 written responses. We also had one additional vendor who chose not to bid the project. So technically 4 from a technical standpoint. Proposals were evaluated and scored. Alternatives were selected and discussed. And when we talk about alternatives, one of the examples that I'll give is there was one particular chair that we selected, and it came in from a price point. It came in a little bit higher than we had anticipated. So we actually would purchase more of the art room chair technically, and replace it in the break room. And then those were some of the alternatives that were discussed so that we can get the best furniture package, the most out of the furniture package that was necessary. The bids ranged anywhere from $1.65 million to $2.01 million. And we have chosen King Business Interiors as our preferred vendor to work with. King is a women-owned, family-operated business located here in Central Ohio, headquartered here in Columbus. They have municipal government experience, a vast amount of municipal government experience, whether it be for the City of Columbus, the City of Columbus Housing Authority, the Upper Arlington, most recently the Upper Arlington Community Center, and they've also worked on projects here in this building as well. So with that, the administration is requesting the authorization for the mayor to enter into contract with King Business Interiors for a base contract of $1.603944 million with a contingency of about just under, or just over rather, $126,000, and that would cover anything that any alterations that are necessary to execute on the plan itself. And then also cover some decor items and other items that that'll need purchased in order to round out the building, bringing the total contract price to $1.729 $1.730 million, and fairly in line with the budget estimate that we had originally come up with. I know one of the questions I'll try and preemptively answer that, but some of the other draws on the overall budget, the $2.3 million, would be the moving and logistics contract that we'll end up signing in order to get us out of this building and into that particular building. We're just about wrapping up a process as it relates to that particular vendor. We know that we're going to be short on cheaper items like storage racks and those things. Honestly, we had asked the furniture vendors to bid those, and they came in way higher than what we can procure them for, and actually just stand them up ourselves, so that we took them out of the bid. And then the E in the FF&E, the equipment side of things like refrigerators, ice dispensers, water dispensers, microwaves, those types of things, which are in the equipment side. We're anticipating using some of the 2.3 towards this as well. So with that, I can answer any questions on this particular item.
All right, thank you, Director. Any questions or comments from my colleagues? Ms. Padova.
Thank you. So I was looking at what was included in this, and it seemed like it was roughly all new furnishings for the building. Is that somewhat accurate?
No, I guess the example, and that's a great question. There's like 90 chairs in this particular room. Mm-hmm. These 90 chairs will be repurposed. There's about 150 of these chairs throughout this building, and the PD for that matter. Those 150 chairs will be repurposed, and I believe that we require, based on office counts and side chairs, we require another 150. So you would see this chair bid inside of the package itself, but it's only the additionals that we need. There is a large amount of furniture coming with us. That's for the moving and logistic people to move and then set up in our building. So the past project that King worked on, all of that furniture, as an example, all those desks, I should say, not all of that furniture, because the cubicles are not coming with us. But those desks, those chairs, the chairs that you folks are sitting in, those chairs are being used in a variety of different conference rooms. You guys are getting new chairs in council chambers. But what can be repurposed is being repurposed out of this building and into the new building.
Okay, great. That's what my next question was kind of what happens to the things that are here. And then,
May I on that real quick?
Yeah.
So whatever's left in this particular building, one of the items that's on the moving and logistics company is the proper disposal of the remaining items. So this table, for example, is not earmarked to come with us. They'll come in, they'll inventory all of these items. They'll be offered to nonprofits and those types of folks, and then anything ultimately that's remaining will be auctioned, and those funds also come back to us. Those funds come back to us.
awesome, thank you. So actually, I think you just answered my other question because did you say that King would be, that's a separate company that would be inventorying
Separate
and
moving and
auctioning
logistics.
and moving? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then you mentioned like decorations or
Decor.
things like, yes, decor, that you said was not included in this, correct?
That, we see you taking a portion of that contingency and applying some of that contingency towards the decor type items, yes.
Okay. I would love to see something, I remember at ADB Safegate, the big mural, and talking with them, they mentioned how important it was to use local artists. And
Sure.
so if we were able to do something similar with some of the, I'm sure there will be art around the building, if we're able to use some local artists for some of that, I would really appreciate seeing that. So just throwing that out there. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Jones?
Yeah, I was just curious about the waiver and emergency for this one.
Waiver and emergency, I will just use the word that starts with T in tariffs.
There's that, okay.
Yeah. We recently purchased, I think, 5 chairs similar to what we're sitting in here. And I think there was a $300 tariff associated with 5 chairs.
Noted.
Was also going to be my question, so thank
She
you.
stole your thunder, so.
All right.
She's getting, you caught on.
As you know, waiver tends to give me a little indigestion, so I appreciate the explanation. And some things are beyond the control of our chambers, so appreciate that. Seeing no further discussion on this, with waiver and emergency requested on the regular agenda on the 19th.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Sticking with Senior Deputy Director on this one, or?
That is me. Let me go ahead and get set up here real quick. All right, good evening. We're here to talk about our favorite thing, our electric accounts. All right. All right, so the city passed in March of 2024, as you may remember, for us to join PCFO, Power Clean Future Ohio. With that resolution, we committed ourselves to a greenhouse gas emission reduction goal by 2030. If you recall, I was here, I believe it was in January, as we talked through the sustainability or Sustainable 2050 process. And there also some of the results we received from working with PCFO on how to help attain that goal by 2030. This is kind of a big opportunity that we have coming up. So what we wanted to do is make sure we came forward and had a discussion item on this. There's not a resolution or council action that's related to it, but we felt this was kind of a next important piece to make sure that we had a discussion about it. So the city manages 67 electric accounts. These accounts are for our municipal operations, such as our facilities, street lights, EV charging stations, pump stations, everything that you can imagine that we put our hands on in the city with electricity. We currently utilize in 2024 4.2 million kilowatts per hour. It's quite a bit, right? So there is a big impact when it comes to a change in this, whether our rate goes up and/or if we transition to a different type of service. There are a couple things as we get into the 2025, getting into 26, which this next agreement would or next price for our electric rates would cover. 825 Tech Center plays a big piece in that, of when that comes online, how fast does that come online, how much electricity is used in there. We do have a lot of sustainable initiatives that we are putting into that building in order to reduce that impact, such as the EECBG lighting, LED fixtures and retrofitting that, along with solar panel array, so we can do some net metering to help reduce those costs as well. So that's going to be a variable that is kind of an unknown right now, but we know that it is a variable. Also is 200 South Hamilton, what happens with this property during that transition, and what would the electrical usage be during that time frame as well. All of that kind of plays a factor into our overall electric consumption, right? So our current agreement runs through November 29th of this year. We're bringing this forward earlier because what we want to do is make sure we have more time to scan the market to ensure that we are going to lock in at the best rate we possibly can. And right now, we are locked in at basically 4.1 cents per kilowatt. That has been a lock-in since 2020. We're not going to get 4.1 cents per kilowatt. It's just not going to happen. So that kind of leads us to what we're kind of preparing for, making sure that part of this discussion is that. Right now, we're looking at a 12-month supplier contract. We've talked with multiple professionals in the field, including we have a broker that we work with to help us shepherd us through this process, where they actually, procure this on our behalf. 12-month term is really what we're looking for right now until we can understand the volatility of the market and see how that plays out. Traditional energy right now, indicative pricing. This is not anything we've locked in at, but right now, as of the 9th was the last update. For traditional energy, we would be looking around 7 cents. And if we were looking at 100% renewable, would be about 7.3 cents per kilowatt. So what does that mean? If we were to take our 4.2 million kilowatt use per year that we hit last year and say that's kind of our baseline, we're looking at about $125,000 increase to our supplier portion of our electric bill over the next year. So that would be from November of 25 through November of 26, essentially, that time frame. It's a big jump, but why we're looking at that as well, and again, we want to look at their 100% renewable as it ties back to that greenhouse gas emission reduction goal we have. This is a great opportunity, but we want to bring that forward as well because right now it is projecting at an additional cost, and that would equate to roughly $1,000 more per month than if we were to go with a brown energy or traditional like we historically have done. So what we want to do is just kind of get your palatability on that as well, because there would, we would always look for, if we are going to do 100% renewable, for a lower rate, if we can work that as well. This is just what the numbers have been coming back as. There have been some dips recently where it has dropped down to 6.7 cents. It's back up to 7.3 cents. But we want to continue to monitor that and be able to be at a point to where we lock in, and it's within the vision that the council has as well for that. So I kind of open that up to any discussion you have on what we're looking at doing over the next basically 5 to 6 months.
Great. Thank you, Director. So when would the lock-in date be that we would have to make?
We have time between, roughly we want about 30 days prior to that to make sure everything can get transferred appropriately. So we really view that we have about a 5-month window. We want to get ahead of this because, again, with the variables in the market, there's a lot of predictivity on what's going to happen with natural gas in that space and how that impacts electricity, solar power, wind power, what's going to happen with getting more of that online, and are certain thresholds going to be met. And then also looking at, we want to if there happens to be a dip in the market that is highly favorable, we want to be in an opportunity to be able to lock in and not kind of lose those opportunities because we wait too long. But we have the ability to lock in any time between now and November.
Thank you. I see Mr. Renner, I saw Ms. Bowers. So Mr. Renner, please.
Corey, thank you very much for giving us the lay of the land. This is the type of information that we definitely need to be able to act upon this. I guess what's missing is from the PCFO report, 54% of the city's operations just on electricity was responsible for CO2 emissions. So I'm trying to understand, because you talked in terms of leaving 200 South Hamilton Road, going to 825. I understand there's a variability there. And we don't really understand fully what it's going to take or what the impact of operating that building is, if I understand what you're saying.
Yep.
And so our emissions could probably go up, even though we're taking a lot of precautions, or maybe they, at best, in my mind, they stay flat.
Yeah, and that's why this is kind of the baseline for where
Right.
where we're projecting right now. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So if you're, to me, $11,000 over a year, if I understand the chart, you're saying 125 increase for traditional, or alternative, it's 136 for the renewable. So it's not on top of
Cent
that.
difference
Yeah,
is-
right,
yep.
exactly. And so we're talking about 11 grand over the course of a year, over 12 months. Is that correct?
Right, as a baseline, but yes, once 825, we would indicate that as well, but yeah.
I understand. And that's, I think, that what makes me a little bit nervous on this. To me, it is worth more to actually lower our CO2 emissions. And so if the price that I have to pay to lower our emissions then is 11, or at least at the baseline, it's $11 or $1,000 a month, I think it's definitely worth it. But if what I would like to counter is, what would in your mind, if we don't go that route and stay with the traditional, well, then what else can we do with that 11 grand? And at this baseline, maybe it's going to be 15, I don't know, but what could we buy with that in order to help us continue on our CO2 emissions reductions?
Well, I got you. And I think it's kind of a broad question where we could go with that, because we do have other initiatives we're doing, kind of the next item on the agenda as well. We're able to, with some of the software that comes with that item, is track greenhouse gas emission reductions. As you recall, the SWACO recycling containers as well, I'm able to help calculate greenhouse gas reduction. So we're leveraging other opportunities as well. I don't know if it's necessarily an $11,000 a year. If we don't use here, it goes there. We have other strategies that we're working through that as well. But it's real money. It's $1,000 a month, and those are things that would be scattered over essentially all of our funds. It's not necessarily general fund money, because some of these electric accounts do hit our enterprise funds as well. So they do hit some of the operational costs for those. So it's not necessarily just $11,000 or $12,000 that are going back to the general fund, but it would be components of that amongst other funds.
Right.
So
I just want to narrow, I really enjoy and I love how you're looking at this from a holistic point of view. Right now, I just want to limit this discussion to city operations and electric usage, right? And so that's what's rumbling in my mind. We can go into the value of CO2 and the impact on our world, on our environment, and our region. In fact, I'm going to Morpsey to talk about water issues and water supply issues that are directly correlated to climate change. So, yeah, I believe it's actually, the value is there. But it also could be touted as a value from the city, that the city actually can leverage and say, you know, we already won awards, let's just take that next step and keep moving. But I definitely would like to hear what my colleagues say.
Thank you, Mr. Renner. I saw Ms. Bowers.
Thank you. Just a few questions. What have we seen historically in terms of use? Have you tracked kilowatt hour use over the last, like, 3 or 4 years, for example?
So we have access to that data. What I pulled was just the most recent 4.2 kilowatts. So we've worked with Tradition Energy since 2014. So we have data that goes back prior to that as well. We can pull farther if we would like, but what we were trying to do is, the most recent 12-month window of what the city's usage has been, because we have done some, with LED light upgrades and things of that in the city. What may have been higher in previous years may not be applicable now as well. So we used kind of the last 12 months average where we are.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting from my perspective to see. I would anticipate that kilowatt hours have declined over the last few years, especially with the LED upgrades. So I would be thrilled to see that. I think the other question that I would have is that is there a predicted, I know you've identified 4.2 million kilowatt hours as our most recent use, but what do we anticipate? How much, do you know how, and maybe you were trying to say that you don't understand this yet, or we don't really know yet, but what is it going to be at 825? What is that kilowatt hour use?
Right.
Yeah, so all we have is historical information on A25 from when we've owned it, basically, and we've ripped every light out of the place. We've insulated the walls, we've redone the windows.
Right, it's not
So the
comparable.
benchmark is really not there as to what it's done historically.
Right.
One of the things that NREL did for us is they established a baseline for us that basically said, we think this is how your facility should perform. I don't have those numbers in front of me, because it's really just a theoretical study as to buildings that are built and or upgraded most recently at about 140,000 square feet. This is how we see them performing. They look at buildings in similar climates, so on and so forth, with some of the same qualities. And then what we would plan on doing is 1 year from moving into 825, we would do a benchmark study on it to basically say, how is the building performing based on other metrics. So that's something that would be hard for us to predict now.
But that projection or that estimate would be useful.
Yes and no, I believe. Yes and no. We know that it's going to go up, obviously. But again, full LED conversions and those things, one of the harder things on our facility is that it is a partial 24/7 operation, which is unique and not necessarily in a lot of these databases, billing databases and such. So it gets complicated, and it gets complicated quickly. One of the other factors, keep in mind too, I don't know if we've talked about this in these chambers or not as it relates to 825, but there's no natural gas on Tech Center Drive. So it is a 100% electric facility also. So while we're not going to see an increase in our natural gas consumption, right, because we're not heating with gas, you're going to see a bit of a spike, though, obviously, in electric, because that's how the HVAC system also functions. So, there's some nuance there.
Okay. And then just to put this in perspective a little bit more, Mr. Schnetzer, check me on my math, but my back of the napkin math indicates that at these projected rates for traditional our annual cost would be around $297,402, give or take,
For supplier portion, yeah. But we still have transmission.
for the
and
supplier
distribution.
portion. Yeah, but that's what we're comparing, right?
Right, around, I would benchmark around 300,000 for the supplier portion.
Yeah, and then, back of the napkin math on the 100% renewable, I came up with $306,600. Does that sound about right? So about, about $25,000 a month, at that, either rate roughly. It's about
Annual, 25,000 annually?
25,000 a month. So 300,000 annually.
For the electric bill
For the
total,
electric-
not the price increase, yes, yeah. Right now, electric bill, including transmission, distribution, and all that, is around anywhere from $30,000 to $35,000 a month is what
Yeah.
we're currently paying.
30 to 35,000, and that would include the delivery, not just the supply. Okay. So it's about a 4% difference is what we're talking about.
From tradition to, yes.
To renewable.
Yeah, because there's also, built into some of these as well, with the overall bill, there are, administrative fees that are built in there, that are like, 0.4% they get, that our residents pay for, or we pay, excuse me, for these accounts for the overall administration of from like the broker services, basically. So there is some overarching in the total costs that are built in. But with these as well, and again, I just want to, the caveat, this is just indicative pricing. Like, it could be different when I ask for it later this week. But if that's kind of what, the whole idea was to kind of put you in the scope of what it's going to look like or what it could look like.
Yeah, well, thank you for the information. I
Yeah,
think it's
yeah.
good for us to know. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I saw Mrs. McGregor.
Yes, so do we have gas in this building?
We do.
We do? So the electricity we're using here is just, I mean, it's just,
Just
it doesn't
lights.
count the HVAC.
Well, there's there's components, right, just like in your home.
Right.
Yep,
So when we move over there, though, everything will be.
everything is electric over there.
My preference, I know, opposed to Mr. Renner's, will be the least expensive, no matter if it's, I mean, $11,000 doesn't seem like a lot, but there's a lot of things you can do for $11,000 with, and I'm not sure it won't be more than that, so.
We look, I think,
I was just going to say thank you, Mrs. McGregor, but did you want to respond? And then Ms. Padova.
no, sorry, I thought we were just, excuse
Mrs.
me.
Padova.
I want to make sure I understand. So this would be for, the current agreement was 5 years, and then this would be for a 12-month term?
Yep, this is going to be a one-year term, which then it would also give us some opportunity at 825 to be able to kind of benchmark that as we get into the November of 26 term of what would be our best option, of whether it's a longer term or continue with short terms until we can get back to where a reasonable rate is.
Okay, and so you said you're kind of watching the rates as they're going up and down. So I'm not exactly sure how this works. Do you, if you say, okay, we want to lock in this rate because it's down, then would the term start then, or would we just
No,
lock in
it
that
would
rate and it
be
would still
on
start in
an
November?
addition from when this agreement expires. But
Okay.
we can lock in now because then they will know, they will get the information of when it would transition over. Yeah.
Okay, so
We
we're-
certainly would not want to lock in earlier and lose our 4.1 cent per kilowatt charge. We're holding on to
Yes.
that every minute we can.
Okay, so regardless of what the rate is, or whether we go traditional or renewable, it would go from November to November?
Correct.
And
That would be the term of
what,
the
and
pricing structure, yep.
so it would be here, but then there's also going to be, I would assume, a time period where we're going to be, like, kind of moving, and, like, how does that work?
Operating both facilities?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that would be part of the kind of unknown impact
Okay.
of what would be the consumption at that point, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, utilities will stay on in this building until it's no longer owned by the city. And/or those utilities are being paid by somebody else.
Okay, and then, so then next November, November 26th, then we would be able to, if we went with renewable, we would, and we've found out that, the electric usage over 825 is much higher than it is here. We found out that, these estimates are way off and it's going to be a lot more expensive than $11,000 a year. We could go back to traditional then if we wanted to.
Yep.
Okay. Okay,
This
thank you.
essentially would just lock us in for that date range. Yeah.
Okay,
And then that's kind of the design also. There's a lot of unknown things, what we're doing in Gahanna and outside of Gahanna that are influencing electrical rates. So the last thing we want to do is lock in for a 5-year term at, let's say, 7 cents, and then it go back down to 4.1. That's kind of what would keep me up at night if that were to happen. So we don't want that. So we're trying to take the let's just say the most sound, safest approach to accomplish, some of the goals and initiative we have, but also being good stewards with the funds that we receive.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Padova. I saw Mr. Schnetzer.
Thank you, Chair Weaver. Mr. Weidensinger, I'll just say, I feel your pain with regard to the price jumps. As somebody that works in financial markets, this has been one heck of a year. You just seem to never know what you're going to get from day to day. So no, I don't think anybody's going to really hold you to it. The question that I have is, between the two contracts, I guess ultimately, what would it do? Like, what's the output or the end product to the residents? And I'll provide a little bit more context to that. So with regard to 825 Tech Center Drive, right, we've essentially paid more than the bare minimum for solar panels. I think it was a contingency or an allowance to, run the conduit, the electrical conduit for a charging station. And, we've obviously done efficiency upgrades, LED, those types of things, and all good stuff, right? And I'm looking at it through this lens of, financial sustainability. And it's kind of this virtuous cycle where, we're moving towards like an electrical fleet for the city. It's quite elegant where you could have like, an electric car, plug it into a charging station and have it powered by a solar panel, right? That, well, maybe the car and the initial infrastructure costs are more upfront. In the long run, the idea is that it's going to lower the cost. So with respect to this contract, I mean, is there anything there that I'm missing, or is this just a straight line, black and white, one costs more than the other?
It's kind of a straight line. We're going to use electric consumption at a minimum of what I presume around 4.2 million kilowatts in the city. And it's just how does that come to us, basically, from a traditional approach or to 100% renewable. The caveat is, again, to help us accomplish a goal that we've set to focus on greenhouse gas reduction by 2030. And so this is one of those steps towards that goal for something that we need. And again, at the $11,000 or $12,000 or per month, it is real money as well. But there are more, this is a pretty big impact potentially for that price difference for reduction of greenhouse gas. And somewhat of also is, we have 100% renewable for all of our residents that we do through our aggregation program as well. This falls us in line with that premise of doing that ourselves as well. So I think it's kind of a multi-pronged approach to trying to accomplish multiple things at, I don't want to say an insignificant cost, but there are things like solar panels and things like that have a very much larger cost with a potential return on investment over time as well.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to be mindful, there's lots of discussion here about we need this, we need that, and I just want to be mindful of what is resident facing. And so I guess if there's anything that I'm missing, I would just ask, what is it that the resident ultimately gets here? Like, what's the deliverable to the community, to the residents, that would be looking at this. And I guess I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything. And when I'm out there talking to folks, we can say, hey, we did this, and here's what it means ultimately for you.
Yeah, and again, this kind of goes back, I think, with Councilman Renner about that savings of $11,000 and where could that go and what could it go towards as well. I think that's kind of that same kind of line of reasoning as it could go to a multitude of potential other options as well.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing further.
Thank you, Mr. Schnetzer. I did have one question. Director, thank you. Are you aware of what maybe some of our peer communities are doing right now, or are they on similar time schedules here? Perhaps some of the members of MORPC that might be peer with us here.
So everybody's kind of on their own plan. It's not like community aggregation where we lump together to be able to pool and have set dates, like we work with our community aggregation with SOPAC. So every municipality is going to be different on what rates they've negotiated. I can't speak to more detail without going and pulling their utility agreement contracts as well. But a lot of it's just that it's the timing of when they've locked in. If somebody locked in 2021 and it was set, 4 or 5 cents, and they're good for another year. It just, some of it is the timing of the market as well, is we've had a very good rate for 5 years, and we have to kind of renegotiate that now based on where the market is, yeah.
Thank you. I'll echo a lot of the comments my colleagues have made. Certainly believe that we have a responsibility to,
Side conversation.
no, you're fine.
I'm so sorry.
No. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Certainly believe that we have a responsibility to be good stewards of our taxpayer dollars, absolutely. I think as a body, we've expressed our commitment to some of our values. I view this as an investment of those taxpayer dollars into those values. And I think it would be appropriate to pursue the 100% renewable based on the information that you've presented. Any additional comments, questions, or discussion? Director?
The only one that I would add is I think if I'm doing my math correctly, we have, Mr. Weibensinger has 3 100% renewables, and I think 1 traditional, but I think he needs a little bit of a tiebreaker here so that we know which direction we're going. If my math is correct.
I think you indicated that there's no action that you're requesting tonight.
So there is no council action required for us to lock in a rate. So basically, the informational piece was presented this evening, and what we would do is keep our eyes on the market with Tradition Energy, and then lock in at a favorable rate if the market was to dip, and obviously lock in about that 30 days prior to November if for some reason we hadn't locked. So there's no council action required, but we would like to do the will of council and not lock Traditional Energy if the will of council is to lock it at a 100% renewable.
Well, I'm interested in the opinion of the administration, and Mayor Jadwin, as the sustainability chair of MORPC, I'm very interested in what the administration thinks is important, and can we achieve the goals set out in the PCFO resolution if we don't pursue this at this time?
Well, no, I appreciate that. I think Director Schultz correctly, as did Director Weibensinger, outline what the purpose of the presentation was this evening. It was to have an open dialogue with council and solicit your input and direction as to where you would like us to go with this for an $11,000 difference to be able to further sustainability goals. It would seem to me that would make sense for us to do that. I recognize it's $11,000 is $11,000, but that's also savings toward other sustainability initiatives that we otherwise might be able to do. So to me, it would seem we should be pursuing the 100% renewable option if the rates stay as we project them to be. If that gap becomes bigger, then that's another conversation. But I would think that is a reasonable approach for us to take.
Thank you, Mayor Jadwin. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Wren?
Yeah, Mayor, I want to also echo Marissa Bowers' comments in thanking you for making a stand like that. And Corey and Kevin, I know that you have a lot of labor to do yet and a lot of sweat and tears. And I think, I don't want to talk in front of anybody, but I think that you heard, if it gets way out of whack, then of course we'll stick with the traditional energy approach. But then my only ask is, what's that delta then? What are we going to do with it in order to promote the CO2 reductions in our city operations? That's all.
Again, it's a 12-month window.
Yeah.
We would be reevaluating, this time next year as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renner.
Mr. Schultz, good. Okay.
Count that 4.
Yeah.
Renewable energy. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. And I would also echo Ms. Bowers and Mr. Renner and say thank you, Madam Mayor, for your guidance on that as well. So, gentlemen, thank you very much. I believe we're sticking with you for the next item.
Still me.
But I'm turning the page over to the back of my
Turn the
sheet.
page, okay. So we have before you a resolution request regarding electric vehicle charging station fees. In accordance with Chapter 949 of Gahanna Codified Ordinance, we set the EV station charging fees by resolution. What you'll see before you is a request to revitalize and adjust those fees based upon what is considered to be more of a marketable rate. If you'll recall as well, in this year's budget, we did request for an allocation to bring 5 of our EV charging locations basically up to working order. We had a few of them that had been out of commission for quite some time. We were able to upgrade and revitalize the software to a newer platform. Right now, we've come in about 75% of the budget, so about 25% under budget of what we originally thought we were going to do based upon how we were able to work through the program to try to make it as cost beneficial as possible. At the municipal parking lot, which is, we code it as 98 North High Street, which is at the big parking lot by the creekside there. That fast charger has been up and operational for over a month. We had a lot of issues with that going offline, a lot of complaints by residents that would try to utilize that unit that is up and operational and on the new software platform. We also did upgrade and bring online of the other locations at City Hall, Hanna Park, Friendship Park, and the golf course. All of those are up and operational as well. What we've been able to do was essentially through the working of the agreement, the 16 level 2s were provided at no cost to the city in order to execute the agreement that we had. We were looking at a 5-year software agreement anyways. That's what we had previously. In order to do so, there's things that are tax credits and things that people can offer them for free. We were able to leverage that and get 16 stations at no cost to the city. We've upgraded those. Our software provider, Shell Recharge, went out of business for working with third-party providers like ourselves. So by April 30th, all of them were going to turn off anyways. We were able to receive a refund from those advance payments that was under the Ohio or AEP Energy grant that we received previously. We have all those on. What we began looking at, again, is the pricing structure. Our rates were highly favorable as we talked during the budget season, as trying to work to where this if we want to call it an amenity to the public, as close to a net zero as we can possibly make it to ensure that they're being utilized by the residents and visitors of Gahanna. So what you'll see before you is a transition to the rates, a 43230 area code, kind of a market study to see what is being offered in this area, what would be considered a market rate. There's a lot of variables out there. People use pricing structure for different reasons. You can look at the Easton area in particular. Some may be free if they're trying to incentivize people to come there. Some would be anywhere from 25 to 30 cents per kilowatt hour in order to basically pay the electric bill, right? So what you'll see before you today is a per kilowatt hour charge for level 2s, along with an idle fee to reduce people from plugging in and sitting there for hours, blocking other users as well. That's consistent with what you'll see at like the Easton Shopping Plaza as well, to help promote basically turnover of the units. It's a reasonable idle fee. And with the fast chargers, again, it's a higher per kilowatt charge, because you pay, essentially the market pays, you pay for the convenience of being able to charge your car. At the fast charger we have that's operational is roughly an hour, no more than an hour and a half, as long as the charger is at full amperage in order to charge your car. Previous rate structure, the fast charger at the Muni lot to do a 50 kilowatt charge would have been about a $5 fee. The pricing structure of where we believe it should be roughly around $28. That's roughly a full tank of gas, if you want to think that. So what we are doing is bringing this more in line to help recapture that revenue for this program. So we respectfully request a resolution to adopt the fees in accordance with Chapter 949 of Gahanna Codified Ordinances.
Thank you, Director. Any comments or discussion? Saw Mr. Renner first, then Mr. Schnetzer.
Corey, again, thank you for your leadership on this separate issue. The state of Ohio is averaging about 38 cents a kilowatt hour for charging, and so these fees are definitely very reasonable. The idle fees are very reasonable with the market. I noticed that it's amp up, so it's still Shell. Is there any future of being able to look at a different company, or are these devices, these charging units, married to Shell amp up?
So these of the 5 locations are going to, the user was married to it for the 5-year term, unless there is a reason for us to basically void those terms and conditions. Yeah.
Understood.
And we went with them for particular reasons, as well as it's a QR code getting out of the drivers having to download all the apps that they need as well. That was one of the pain points from listening to people who utilize the chargers, is the structure in itself. It's a little more basic, which is why it's a cheaper software for us to operate. And, we wanted to work on to ensure that it was as cost feasible as we could make it, but end user friendly as well.
The only other question I have is, do we have any data like on the use of each of our chargers, especially at the fast? Do we have issues with people, sitting there idling, charging up their car for a long time or whatnot?
So a lot of that, not great data. There's a couple of reasons for that. First and foremost, the Shell Recharge, application that we had access to, it basically no longer exists for us, which maintains a lot of the data. But I will tell you, in doing some research to try to get this program to a sustainable level, not a lot of usage based, because a lot of times there were a lot of issues with the chargers themselves. The grants, and I'm a big fan of every grant that we can get for the city, if it makes sense. A lot of the grants at that time were some of the lower end chargers that by the time they got to 5 years, the end of life, we had a lot of potential upkeep issues. And we kind of made a collective action in order to basically limp it along until we could find a more cost-effective approach to bring them up. That was part of the budget conversation as well, is this is a amenity for residents and visitors. Since we've had them on, we've received a lot of great feedback about what how they're working, and that they actually work, and we're not devoting staff time to ensuring that we're bringing them online and doing that as well. So so far it's been a great change for some of our residents that are repeat users of this as well, because they notice when they're not working well, especially if we are charging a per hour rate. And the charger that could run at 7 kilowatts is not getting past 5, and they're being charged more than what is kind of advertised. So that's part of the premise behind the kilowatt charge as well. They pay for what they get, not necessarily just on how the machine is performing.
Very nice.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I think I said Mr. Schnetzer next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, Mr. Weibensinger, appreciate your efforts here. Similar comments from me as you've heard in the past, and I think the fees somewhat reflect this, since we quite literally just had a conversation about cents per kilowatt hour, but all I would ask is that the fee schedule ultimately covers the city's all-in cost on this. I mean, you've mentioned software costs. I'm sure, if you're swiping a credit card or something, Visa or MasterCard or whomever is taking their cut as well.
End user
right?
pays 100% of that.
Okay, perfect. That's all. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm just asking that this, I guess a similar structure would be like what we see in parks, right? Like where it's tiered, depending on the public benefit. Well, I don't have
And
the data.
a lot of those costs are going to be essentially based on consumption as well.
Okay.
Because if we are able to recap a certain percent higher than our electric costs, that could be rolled towards the infrastructure as well, right? We get to a pinch point to where if we try to put too much pressure on that, then they don't get used, and then we bear a stronger cost, right? We want them to be utilized, but we've got to kind of watch that price point as well.
Yeah. I think what you're referring to is an economics term called the price inelasticity. So
yep.
we won't go down that rabbit hole, but in layman's terms, all I'm saying is that the fee ultimately reflects more than just the cost of electricity, right? Because there's more that goes into it than that.
And that is our continued goal with that. But, I can't sit here and say that it's going to be a cost neutral or a revenue producing product or amenity for the city. But there would be some type of commitment from the city to make these a sustainable program.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
But we will continue to minimize that impact.
All right, thank you, Mr. Schnetzer. Mrs. McGregor?
I guess my question was similar to Mr. Schnetzer's, but I did want to know, do we have any data on how often they're used? I asked this years ago, and they said that it was too much work to gather the data, so.
No, I
You
can
guys
pull it
were
up
not
right
here.
now. Yeah, so we have a complete analytics dashboard from the software provider that we customize. So again, this goes back to a previous statement on the last topic, was we can even look the greenhouse gas emission reduction goals for every kilowatt used in an electric vehicle versus a non-electric vehicle. We can look at the average time somebody is on a meter, how many times are they idle, we have a whole lot of data under this new software program that we're utilizing that may not have existed in previous applications of it. Yeah.
I would be interested in knowing just how often they're used,
Yeah.
just.
And I will tell you, the one here at City Hall is by far the most used out of all that we have. And then the fast charger being our only active fast charger at the Muni lot gets used quite a bit. That was the one we probably got the most complaints when it would be offline, because it is a fast charger. People do not want to sit for 4 to 6 hours to charge a vehicle when they can get it done in 60 minutes or around there.
That's all.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, it's a resolution for, so on for the 19th. Are folks okay with consent?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Next up, we have items from council members. First up, we have Councilmember Jones.
Thank you. So I just wanted to circle back to a discussion we had last week regarding House Bill 96, which is the state budget and language being added to limit how much over 30% our school districts could have on hand. So there were 2 questions that were asked last week. I just wanted to share for colleagues and for the record responses to those. So the district had estimated $15 million as essentially what the district could lose if this legislation were to pass. The question asked was where did that number come from, and that is the 15 million is over the 30% that the district would have in the bank. A little bit of additional clarification that the district representatives offered is, so our school district basically, it runs on sort of a 5 to 6 year budget cycle. In the early years, when the voters approve the levy, the district essentially collects more monies to build up sort of an overage. And so when we get to year 5 or 6, which is essentially where the district is now, they're using that saved up money to spend. And so essentially, if that legislation would pass, we'd have to go back to voters more often to get more overage in the fund. So that is response to question number 1. Question number 2 is, so if the district has to give up 15 million or whatever is over that 30%, what does that money, where does it go? We were able to confirm that it would go back to taxpayers. However, exactly how that happens is still a little unclear and to be determined. But it is estimated it would be tricky given the school district runs on a July to June fiscal year and the state runs on a calendar year. So essentially residents would get money back and then very shortly thereafter have another levy, if that kind of makes sense. It's just they would overlap on top of each other. So in terms of sort of next steps, wanted to provide answers on those questions. We did discuss last week, there was hesitation about doing a sort of joint letter from council. And so what I'd like to recommend is that the template has been provided if folks want to. I do feel that it's something that we should all still advocate for, but I would say each of us individually can make that decision whether you choose to or not. I will personally be sending it as an elected official, as a resident, as a parent of a student in the district, and would welcome colleagues to do the same. And so I'm open for partnerships or questions, or if there's any additional information you like, I'm happy to dig into that.
All right, thank you, Ms. Jones.
Yeah.
Any further, I saw Mr. Renner.
Councilwoman Jones, I want to just applaud you for finding out those answers to our questions. And I think you've also come up with a proposal that separates it and disconnects it from the council body. And everybody, people can, as you said, can choose to send it or not. I think that's a very fair and reasonable approach.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
I
Renner.
was just going to say thank you for getting the answers. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mrs. McGregor. Echo my colleagues in expressing gratitude for coming back and with the additional information. I plan on sending a letter in my personal capacity, so or in my individual capacity, I should say. So, thank you for that. I do believe that at its heart, a strong, fully funded school district is in the best interests of everybody in the city. So, do what I can in my own way. So, thank you very much for that. Anything further on this item? No. All right, next up, Councilmember Bowers.
Yes, thank you. So we've brought back the elected officials' salary ordinances just for further discussion. I wanted to just give a little background summary on kind of where we were with this discussion, and then pass it over to City Attorney Tamma Larison to share with you her research that's contained in the memo that is made part of the agenda and file this evening. So earlier this year, in February, I had introduced a preliminary discussion on the subject of amending or adjusting elected official salaries. This had previously come up in 2022, where there was some indication that our city council salaries did not meet a $12,000 threshold in order to be able to participate or to earn credits to be able to prospectively participate in an OPERS health retirement benefits. What then later came forward was a significant analysis based on research compiled by the city attorney's office and then supported through some of the consultants that also participated in the city's salary ordinance from last year. To level set, the current salary for the mayor's role is at $103,809. This salary has been in effect since 2011. The proposed start date for an effective new salary would take effect upon a subsequent term and starting in January of 2028. The current salary for the full-time city attorney's role is $80,765. Again, the proposed increased salary would not go into effect until January of 2028. And currently, council member salaries are $9,600 with an extra $100 per month for council president. These went into effect in the year 2000. And just by some rough math, if this council member salary had kept pace with inflation, the salary today would be over $18,000. So with that, I will, and again, what had been originally suggested was that ward members and at-large members, those salaries would take effect upon the start of the subsequent terms. So January of 2026 for ward seats and January of 2028 for at-large seats. We did get clarification from the city attorney at a prior committee meeting that they could in fact start on the same date in January of 2028 if desired. So I think that kind of sums up where we were. And I will turn it over to the city attorney for a discussion about the memorandum and the additional research that she has been able to compile.
Thank you. There was some discussion previously that the city attorney's salary was somewhat problematic to research due to differences in elected city attorneys versus hiring a law firm, or a law director. And so I had at my disposal a 2024 salary survey that was conducted by the International Municipal Lawyers Association, or IMLA. The IMLA survey, unfortunately, prohibits dissemination, and so I have requested special permission to provide a copy to council, and so I'm still waiting on a return from that request. However, I am able to highlight some of the findings in that report. The report it is an International Municipal Lawyers Association. However, the large majority were from the United States. I'd say out of 334 responses that were received, 325 were from the United States, and that covered 46 different states. And of those, 301 were full-time public sector employees, meaning either a elected or appointed law director, but not with a firm. So a full employee, full-time with the city, which would be comparable to the Gahanna city attorney position. In that range, they broke this down into jurisdiction by population size. The smallest jurisdiction that participated had a population size of 2,300 people. The largest jurisdiction had 3.8 million. And there was the minimum reported salary was the Gahanna city attorney position. The next lowest was 95,000, which I believe to be Reynoldsburg, which has just recently been modified to be 124. So this is a little bit stale information because there have been some jurisdictions that have adjusted since this report came out. However, the average for population sizes between 20,000 to 49,000 had an average of $157,808 as the average, and that does include the Gahanna amount. That does pull that down a little bit. For a more local comparison, so that was ranging across the United States of all different jurisdictions, and as well as that small band of 20,000 to 49,000. I did take a look at both Reynoldsburg and Whitehall, both of which have a full-time elected city attorney, neither of which that has a prohibition upon outside work unless it interferes with the duties of city attorney, which is comparable to this position. Both departments have larger staff than Gahanna does, and both have a salary of, each has a salary of, Reynoldsburg is $124,036, and City of Whitehall was $100,000. I would just like to note that in these jurisdictions, the support staff has salaries comparable to what the Gahanna City Attorney's salary is. So I just want to put that into perspective. As has been discussed before, first-level staff here at the city does have a pay band with a 5-year mid-year of approximately of about $97,676. And so that role is also full-time, but is mostly criminal-based job duties versus this position, which is mostly civil and oversees the criminal side. So I would respectfully request that council consider this ordinance to make this a more competitive position on the market rate and commensurate with the job description and duties for future terms. Thank you.
Thank you, City Attorney. Oh, sorry.
Nope, just saying thank you. Back to you, Ms. Bowers.
Yeah, I appreciate your work on this and appreciate you sharing this information. I think, certainly would appreciate if you're able to share the IMLA report, as I think that there are certainly cost of living adjustments based on city location, East Coast, West Coast kind of thing. So that might be useful as well. I'm happy to hear any additional questions and be able to provide additional research or information to my colleagues. I have shared that there is no hard timeline on this, and there is plenty of time to continue to gather information.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. Any questions, comments, discussion from my colleagues? Ms. Jones.
Yeah, I would say we have kind of discussed this pretty extensively, and I will just say, for myself personally, have really gone back and forth, but I feel with all of the information and the research that everyone has shared that I am in support, with the exception of council would like to move that to being all starting on 2028. And so just wanted to share, since we've had this discussion a while, that I am not in need of additional information, but that's where I would stand, is wanting to shift everyone to start at 2028.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. So, Mr. Schnetzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam City Attorney, can I just share, we had a back and forth email about that IMLA report, and I know in there you indicated, and also in your comments, that it can't be shared. Do we have any insight as to why that might be, or if there could be some forthcoming relaxation in it? And where this is coming from is, I don't remember if it was actually the February conversation or the March conversation, but my hang up with the city attorney's salary recommendation is that the data that we have, that we can get our hands on, is very thin. I think there's 3 examples of electeds, and yet there's this report that's out there that might have more information in it. And I'm a data nerd, and I'd love to get my hands on it if we possibly can. So that's ultimately where the question's coming from. I would feel much more comfortable if I could, review it myself. That's all.
I completely understand, and I did follow up with an email again today, and I will call them first thing tomorrow and keep applying pressure there. I think that when the salary survey was disseminated, when they were soliciting feedback and responses, it was, you could either purchase a copy of the report or you could participate, and it was so that they could encourage participation, that they had a fee associated with it if you did not participate. And so in either instance, they didn't want the report disseminated, because then that would kind of disincentivize people to actually respond and participate in the survey. But I, again, don't think, the whole purpose of this was for local governments to be able to use this information when having these kinds of discussions. So I don't see any reason why they would not give me that permission. It's just a matter of getting a response.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah, so I will continue to work on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schnetzer. Mrs. McGregor.
Did you say that Reynoldsburg, Whitehall, and Gahanna, that you can do other work outside of this job? Is that correct?
So Whitehall's charter is absent prohibition or a authority to do so. So the presumption is that as long as it does not interfere with the duties, it is permitted. Reynoldsburg says that any work that interferes with the office of city attorney is prohibited, and that's all it says. So again, it is open to outside work if it's not interfering with the duties of city attorney. And Gahanna explicitly authorizes a private practice. However, by statute, it indicates that this office is to be full-time and primary occupation.
Okay, great.
Were you, Ms. Bowers, and then Madam Mayor, or?
I didn't have
Oh,
anything
okay,
else.
Madam Mayor, sorry.
No, thank you. I've previously expressed my objections on this. I'm not going to repeat those tonight. It was the same stance I took back in '22 when Ms. McGregor brought it up. But I do want to actually add something else, notwithstanding the objections I've already raised. I do not believe it is appropriate for council to move forward with these ordinances proposed, as I do believe it's not appropriate for you to make your own recommendations on your own pay increases. When we, the administration, come to council with a recommendation on a staff position or salary increases, it's based on an extensive evaluation that has been done by an outside source that has come in, looked at how we are operating, and not only gathered data, but then done an extensive evaluation and consideration of the external factors as well. And in this case, I would, if you are adamant moving forward with this, what I would propose is that the HR department engage an outside neutral independent party to take the data that has been pulled and come up with evaluations and recommendations as to what should be done here. Because that would be the independent way of making your own recommendations as to what the salary increases should be. I know there was data pulled, but the recommendations that have been made all have just come from, here's what we think it should be. Whereas like a company like Clemens Nelson that does our own salary increase recommendations when we come forward actually looks at and compares the type of operations, the type of government that we have. No government is the same. And looking at those factors. So if you truly want to go forward with this in an appropriate way, that would be my recommendation and request.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Bowers, I know
Yeah.
you're pulling something up.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to pull up the charter section. So I appreciate the offer, Mayor Jadwin, and thank you so much for offering that forward. I think when we talked about it last year, it hadn't been considered in the 2024 budget. So it had not been, we had not engaged Clemens Nelson further because it hadn't been budgeted for. I would be interested in an estimate if Clemens Nelson would like to share that with us. But as I've said before, Gahanna Charter Section 4.17 specifically authorizes and instructs council to set the salaries for all elected offices. Now, I think we have taken a lot of information and research in and tried to benchmark these salaries as well to the research as we possibly can, as well as to peer communities. So that said, I'm happy to take information from Clemens Nelson about how much they would charge to synthesize the research and/or supplement it if they needed to, and identify appropriate salaries.
We can certainly ask Clemens to provide an estimate as to what it would cost to do an actual evaluation. And I appreciate that the charter says council sets the salaries. Certainly that is the role that you have. Whether that means you should set them just based on whatever you feel, or you should set them based on actual data and recommendations, two different things. But I think best practices would dictate that we actually have an outside independent source provide some recommendations.
Well, thank you so much for your offer, and we look forward to getting that information. Hopefully, do you think maybe next week would be an appropriate turnaround?
That's up, we'll have to reach out to Clemens Nelson to see how fast they can get that.
All right. We look forward to that information, and I will look to follow up with you at the next committee of the whole then.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Ms. Padova. And then-
I just want to clarify, my understanding is that none of us are setting our own salaries because all of us city attorney and mayor would have to be reelected or someone else be elected, and the next round of electeds would take these salaries. And none of us are entitled to the positions that we hold currently, so. Thanks.
Ms. Jones?
That was it. I just think that that's an important distinction, because when having that conversation with the community, that has been one of the questions, is how do you get to decide what you would essentially be getting paid? So I just wanted to make sure that we had that distinction, that we are not deciding what I would get. It is whoever is in 2028.
Yeah.
I will say that, I feel good about the research. Again, putting on day job HR hat, I do understand having someone objective. I understand that that's coming now. I guess we've had a lot of conversations, and I know I personally just have a little anxiety over continuing to have the conversation, because it is an awkward conversation. And so I just wish that we would have had this recommendation of having someone objective sooner. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Anything else on these items? All right. Seeing none, we will await additional information in the near future. Thank you very much, everybody. Last up, I will turn to myself.
Sorry, I have one
Oh, I'm sorry.
resolution. There's a resolution hiding on
You
there.
did, I'm sorry, Ms. Bowers.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to bring forward a resolution honoring Chloe Inc. And commending a longtime Gahanna resident, Connie Nafsinger, for her founding and for her service to Chloe. Connie, I first learned about, a good friend of mine was living on Klotz, and her next door, she would always tell me about how wonderful her next door neighbors were, and how kind they were and how generous they were and how much they helped her, especially when she had, her children were very young. And so I came to learn that Connie had this organization called Chloe, which is now celebrating its 25th year in service to young mothers in our community. She, as a nurse, identified a need and a gap in support and care, particularly for this group. And so she took her knowledge and her compassion and her passion to be able to support the community and turned that into Chloe. So Chloe just celebrated last week on May 8th. This 25 years of existence, and they celebrated Connie's retirement and the passing of the torch to the next executive director. I would love to recognize longtime Gahanna resident Connie for her work and for her founding of Chloe. She is available to attend our next meeting and would love to introduce us to the new executive director.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, I will just express my gratitude to you, and thanks for putting in the effort on this, and we look forward to celebrating Ms. Nafziger. It is a resolution for consent on the 19th.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next up for Committee of the Whole, resolution recognizing June 2025 as LGBTQ plus Pride Month for the City of Gahanna. Nothing too different about this one. Comes up each year, but I did add the plus to the title and to the text, as that is the general nomenclature used by Stonewall and Equality Ohio. I do anticipate some guests at the first meeting in June for that. Happy to answer any questions.
I'm not okay with the plus. If you can't name it, I don't know. I mean, I can't really agree to it if you can't name what the plus is. It could be anything. So if the plus is in there, I won't support it.
IA.
The alternative, I believe, is IA. Yeah.
Then there's also,
Yeah.
there's two, like, we can name them all, but we would need a good half a page.
That's what I mean. And the last year's didn't have the plus. I'm okay with that. This year, I'm not.
I believe, I would just say that throughout history, there are terms and terminology that changes and adapts to reflect current practices. I think you have several organizations throughout the state and the country that have a generally accepted term to avoid the continuous half-page. I believe that is all that this is. Would it be beneficial perhaps in the body of the text to list additional? No. Any other questions or comments on this item?
I recognize, I do appreciate that there are a lot of letters that are sometimes aggregated here, but I do think that generally if we, I think that it is important that we speak with one voice on this.
Agree.
I think that, that it says a lot to the community, that they know that all 7 of us stand with the LGBTQ community. And I would hate to see us splintered over something like this. So if, typically I've seen like 2 Qs and an IA, but honestly, the 2 Qs aren't even really, it's less common. So I think that the LGBTQIA perhaps would cover everything if Mrs. McGregor would feel more comfortable with LGBTQIA. Intersex and asexual. Intersect, I mean, I'm certainly happy, would this come on in?
This would come on the June 2nd agenda.
We could bring this back on committee next week, because we'll stack a committee meeting
That's
next
correct.
week. Okay, perfect, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Weaver, for bringing this forward, appreciate it.
Thank you, appreciate everybody's comments. Bring this back to committee next week. Anything further for committee of the whole? All right, seeing none, we will adjourn committee of the whole, and I'll turn things over to Chairman Renner for finance.
Director, just give me a thumbs up. I know, take your time. All right, go ahead. I'd like to call to order our Finance Committee for Monday, May 12th. Director, take it away.
All right, have for you today the Q1 report for 2025. A similar agenda that we have in all the quarters. We're going to talk about the general fund and all the special funds. We'll have a brief summary of the capital improvement plan, what our income tax trends are through the end of the quarter, investments, and then a conclusion based on those Q1 results. So starting with general fund revenue, tracking just as would be expected, we're at 25% of what was budgeted for revenue. I will point out that property taxes typically collected and received in March. We got a little bit later, so that will be posted in April, the same as it was in 2024. So those numbers we'll see come in the second quarter. The other thing that I'd like to point out is looking at the other revenue, seeing that large percentage of the budget and also that large increase from last year. So that consists of those COHCC, or the Central Ohio Healthcare Consortium, those dividend shares that we received, plus the real estate tax refund for the taxes we paid on 8/25. Besides that, nothing really, just tracking as expected. Any questions on revenue? Looking at expenses, very similar. We're slightly lower than 25%, but I still think tracking as expected. Compared to last year, we're up about 26%. The majority of that is related to the capital outlay for 8/25. And then we have our salaries and benefits increase that was expected. We had all those wage increases, a couple new positions added, and also in comparison to the first quarters, we don't have as many vacancies, and we filled a little bit more in the first quarter of 2025 compared to the first quarter of 2024. So I'm expecting as we kind of go through the year to see that kind of smooth a little bit. Questions on expenditures? Okay. Moving on to other financing sources and fund balance. I haven't made any transfers yet. A lot of that is dictated based on what the real estate taxes are that are coming in. So you'll see those transfers as we move into the second quarter report. Ending the quarter, adding about $894,000 to fund balance, bringing fund balance to about $43 million. Of that, 14.7 is reserved for encumbrance. 9.1 reserved for emergencies, noting that that's been increased also by $650,000. That leaves us an unreserved fund balance of $19.2 million, which is about 7 months of operations. Any questions on the general fund before I move on?
I'm sorry.
Please, go ahead.
Director Burt, are you going to review department by department, or have you aggregated expenditures and that's it? Are you going to go any deeper? I want to hold my question if you're going to go any further into department by department.
I'm not going to go any deeper. That detailed information is just provided for your review, so you could see kind of what's rolling up into the bigger picture.
Just a follow-up question then, if you wouldn't mind. I think at the year-end budget, the year-end finance report, I had asked about the Public Service Department because it had, the spending was so far below allocated budget. And so I was wondering if you could tell me if how Q1 was going.
We're getting to that next with the
okay.
special funds.
Perfect.
Yeah, this is just the general fund I'm talking about right now. So we'll
not
go
the
into
Public
each of those.
Service Fund, but Public Service Department, but maybe that'll answer the question.
Yes, so the
Okay.
Public Service Fund houses the engineering department, which has had lower expenses, and we'll touch on that here
Okay.
when we go. We'll look at budget first, and then we'll look at the actuals comparison. It is tracking a little better, but we'll get to that here, actually, with the next slide.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So this first slide that we're looking at is how each of those special funds compared to the 2025 budget. So seeing in revenue, very similar to the general fund, we're tracking as we should. We're right about 25%. You'll see the changes in income tax. That's due to that change in allocation based on what's anticipated for their spend for the year. Looking at expenses, public safety is looking good, tracking right about where they should be. Parks and Recreation is as expected because their season starts in the second quarter. Public Service, talking about their expenditures tracking a little bit lower. See, they're only at 2% of the budget for their contracted services. They're about 20% of the budget for their personnel. They do still have some vacancies there. And they do have projects that are picking up They are working on the code updates currently. I believe the thoroughfare plan is on its way. So they are picking up, but they are still slightly shortly staffed. So there are still some projects that are kind of lagging there. Looking at how each of those funds compares to last year. So looking at public safety, seeing that increase in revenue, which is expected, and seeing that jump in income tax because they are getting a little bit of a bigger chunk of that 1%. Salaries and benefits, 7% increase over last year. This is salary and benefit increases that were known, and there was also a fourth SRO officer added, I believe, maybe within the first quarter, if not the second quarter of last year. So seeing that little bit of a jump beyond just the salaries and benefits. On the contracted services side, that's the mental health liaison that was brought on late in 2024, I think either in quarter 4, maybe quarter 3. So seeing that huge jump in those contracted services for that. Ending the year, or ending the quarter, adding about 256 to fund balance. Unreserved fund balance is about 466,000. Moving on to Parks and Recreation, again, revenue, as we would expect it. They're receiving a little bit more of the income tax dollars also. You will note that their charges for services is up by 12%. That's those camp registrations and those pool memberships that are being bought. They're just coming in a little bit higher than they were in that first quarter of 2024. Looking at the expense side compared to last year, seeing that salaries and benefits increase, again, we knew that we were adding some positions there, and again, with the salary increases that also went along with that. Looking over at public service, this is kind of where you're seeing, even though it's a small number, that 33,000, where they were in the first quarter when they were severely understaffed, quarter 1 of 2024. 33,000 making almost a 500% increase, but it is showing that they are working and they're picking up cadence. So adding 49,000, leaving an unreserved fund balance of about 1.8 million. Any questions on the 3 special revenue funds beyond that? Looking at our capital improvement fund, again, revenue, where we'd expect it to be. You'll see that last year we did receive those grant dollars for the Cherry Bottom stabilization. So that was that grant that we received in 2024. No grant revenue that I'm aware of coming in for this year into the capital improvement fund. We have expenses at our 19% of what was planned. Again, we're in the first quarter. A lot of what you're seeing there is a runoff of those 2024 projects. As we start to get 2025 up and running and things bid, a lot of those that you approved today for those projects. No transfers in or out at this time. Those will be coming through that second quarter when we transfer for the debt service. And then that leaves us, we're using about 8.9 million of fund balance, being reduced to about 57.8 million. 38.4 million of that is reserved for projects, leaving an unreserved fund balance of about 19.3 million. Any questions on the capital improvement fund? The next couple slides are just kind of summary information on where we are in this first quarter, what the project activity has been. Again, you'll see a lot of this is just that 24 being carried over. There are a couple 25s in there that have started, but the majority of this is that carryover of those 24 projects and those continuing to be finalized. This is just another breakdown by fund and type of projects that are occurring within those funds. Again, seeing the same numbers. Any questions on capital improvement? Okay, income taxes. So saw that 11% increase over last year. Withholding was exactly where I expected to track, knowing that we had some economic development in the area. The part that was a little different was seeing that individual in net profit jump quite high compared to last year. The first quarter is the year in which, or the first quarter is the time frame in which everybody files. So we tend to see a little bit of a bump there. This is a little bit larger than we've seen in the past. Did a little bit of research and found that on the individual side, we do look like we have a couple large earners. I'm not sure if those are anomalies or not. We'll monitor those. But just looking overall at the wages across the data, seeing increases in wages for our residents pretty much across the board. Looking at net profits, again, similar. Seeing the majority of businesses within the city of Gahanna seeing increases in those net profits. And those could be a couple different things. Each business kind of operates under their own model, and there's also a 5-year operating loss that could be carried forward. So this could be generalized growth, those operating losses finally rolling off after they've been using them for a number of years, or a combination of both. So we'll just keep on looking at the individual net profit to see, is this a sustainable pattern that we're going to see throughout this year, or is this just similar in past years where we maybe have some anomalies in that first quarter? Looking at investments, 98.5 is invested either in money markets, Star Ohio, or government bonds. Our investment income is 22% of plan, which is tracking right along where it should be. Saw a slight decrease of about 3% with those reductions that happened towards the end of the fourth quarter. The last information from the Federal Reserve is there are no plans as of yet for any reductions. But just seeing where everything kind of lies. I think there will still be some in 2025, but they just haven't stated or come out and said when they're planning on those interest rate changes happening. So in conclusion, we saw a slight decrease in inflation from 2.9% to 2.4%, which is looking good. Again, the Federal Reserve has not announced anything for rate changes in 2025 yet. The reason for that is all the federal policy stuff that's going on, right? Tariffs, Medicare, taking away grant funding. On top of that, we also have the state biennium budget that is coming up here to be passed, hopefully July 1. All of these things could have a potential impact on revenue or the cost of us maintaining our current level of service, but it's just too early to tell what that is or what that looks like. So just more wait and see. Continued work on our Gahanna will establish the city's overall direction over the next 5 years. We're expecting continued growth at this time, depending on what those federal policies and what that state biennium budget looks like. Any questions?
Anything? Mr. Snetzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it, Joanne. As I was sitting here listening, I was thinking I was going to ask you about bullet point number 3, and then you kind of introduced it, so I guess I'll take the baton and run with it. Are there any key risks with regard to state or federal policy that is on your radar that would impact 2025? Or is this more of a 2026 item? And if there are 2025 items, I'm just curious, what would be the top 1 or 2 that, risk derailing your estimates and your projections for this year?
Right. So I think really what it comes down to is on the cost side is how much more is it going to cost us to do business with the tariffs.
Yeah.
So that's the big one. The overhaul of Medicare could create more state share. I don't necessarily know what that means for the local government, except that they might shrink local government funding yet again. If they have those initiatives they have to pay for. On the state biennium budget side, a lot of the noise has been around schools. How do we fund them? How do we fund them appropriately? They had the property tax reform group that came together last year. I don't know if anything came out of that. I think there are some things that are at the state level, maybe suggestions that came out of that they're trying to push through as bills, but I haven't seen anything concrete. So really, it's just hard to tell what direction they're going to go in, and at what point does it trickle down to our level?
Yeah.
Or, if it's impacting other governments, does that divert funding from us at that point? It's very difficult to tell at this point. So we could have 2025 impacts. We just don't know what they're going to be, and how big they're going to be.
Okay,
I would think most of this will probably impact our 2026 budget.
okay. And goes without saying, if you see anything, it'll come forward in these quarterly meetings, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I keep a good eye on the OML
Yep,
information that comes through. They put out great bulletins about what's happening there, links to information. So I'm constantly monitoring that and bring it up to, senior staff as needed to determine, do we go forward with this stuff? What do we report on? Do we show opposition? And so on and so forth, so.
gotcha. Thank you. And I'll just share, I share with you the sensitivity towards potential changes to Medicaid. That is, I believe, on average, about the second largest expenditure for most states, Ohio included. For those that don't know, that's the joint cost share of that is, some of it's paid by the federal government, some of it's paid by the state. It's a very large budgetary item for both the federal government and the state. And I think Commerce and Energy Committee at the federal level is marking up their bill this week. So we may get some clarity into that either
Hopefully.
this week or next. So I guess we'll see.
Yep.
Yep, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Snetzer. Anything else? Okay, Director, thank you for.
Well, we still have the update information.
Yeah, so go right ahead.
Yeah, and
into the
this is
second-
going to be very, very quick. So everybody wants to go home, including me. But it's just more talking about our department and how we're set up in some metrics of what we process and what you get for what you budget for us for financial services. So it's going to be very brief. Just talking about our department, it is myself, my finance manager, I have payroll analysts, 2 finance analysts, and a management analyst, 2. Some 2024 data. So on the payroll processing side, this is based on a 26 cycle. So 8,051 checks, about 309 checks per cycle. Obviously, we have dips and valleys because of seasonal employees. So those are all based on 26 pay periods. On the accounts payable side, we paid 10,556 invoices, about 203 per week. Credit card transactions, 1,688. That's about 141 credit card transactions processed per month. Purchase orders and accounts receivable are daily. So 6,468 purchase orders processed, about 25 per day. And on the accounts receivable side, 36,352 individual receipt transactions processed, which is about 140 per day. So those are the kind of the day-to-day things that we're going through on a regular basis. We have the banking and investments, reconciling the 3 banking accounts we have, managing our investment advisor and reconciling those investment and Star Ohio accounts, liquidating investments when are needed for cash flow purposes, managing the debt of the city. We have 6 bond issuances and 2 OPWC loans, making sure we're making those payments and managing those processes, and then working with our bond counsel and our municipal advisor when debt is needed. Financial reporting, obviously you're all aware of the ACFR and the budget book, the quarterly reports, but we also do a lot of ad hoc reports. Census Bureau, requests from departments, requests from all of you. So having the ability to run those reports, and we do that by making sure that we're managing the city's accounting system appropriately. Financial reporting and compliance also relies heavily on internal controls, so we make sure that we have a robust internal control system and that that's being monitored and amended as needed. We manage the appropriations you all pass, the annual financial audit, and then also providing customer service to all of our internal stakeholders, all the various departments, and then processing all the internal transactions. Our initiatives that we completed in 2024 was the 2023 ACFR, the budget book. We secured our AA1 rating with Moody's, continued to improve on the CIP process and implementation, and then in 2025, we conducted our first procurement training. And then we transitioned a long-term employee upon retirement, transitioned those responsibilities to a new employee. For 2025, we'll be completing the 2024 act for the 2026 budget book. And right now what we're doing is we're taking a good look at our internal processes, the staff that's assigned, and determining if we need to have some sort of realignment. So we're working with senior staff with that. We always have a goal of creating the proper, financial report is on our slate for this year to at least come up with a draft. And then we're working on a capital asset inventory so we can get that information into our accounting system. And then we also have an act for builder that's part of our accounting system that we're going to start looking at for feasibility to move that process into the accounting system. That's it. Any questions?
I don't think that we have any.
All right.
Thank you very much
You're
for
welcome.
all your reporting. Okay, motion to adjourn.